Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Steve Werner, and he's an expert at selling live events, and he has going to share with us today lessons learned selling over 50 million using live events. I'm really happy to have him on, and I'm really happy to have his expertise because public speaking, webinars, live events are what I'm really interested in, and hopefully add value to the audience. Steve, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, and I'm really excited to dive into the conversation.
Sure. I'll do the best I can to fit it into 20 seconds. In 2012, I went to see Tony Robbins. If you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event, it like you get super motivated, you get all these big dreams. I went and took action on them, but I failed miserably. I went back, I quit my job. At the time, I was working for Vail Resorts and I quit. I put in 6 months notice. I left, moved to Las Vegas. I cashed in all my 401k, my entire life savings to try to hold an event. I rented the largest ballroom at Treasure Island. And yeah, went down, signed on the dotted line, was super excited. I thought I had enough money to last me like 2 years. I had enough money to last me like 2 months. Blew through everything that I had and failed at the event. We sold 2 tickets. But from there were a couple lessons that I learned. I had some friends who asked some really good questions and we crawled out of that failure. The next event we did was much smaller in size, but I was actually able to fill it. We made a little bit of money at that event, like not that much, like 8 grand. But then from there, the next event we made 25, the next event we made 50, the next event we made like 250. Started growing and got much better at speaking. Also learned all the ins and outs of all of it and went on. We had our first $1 million year in 2000 and went on to help now hundreds of entrepreneurs, both with live events, speaking on stage, crafting their core talk, and building webinars and workshops. COVID happened. We went virtual. We still held a live event. This is funny for people here in Texas. We rented a really big room. And if you've ever been to everyone's been to a conference, right? Everybody had their own 10-foot table. So we had 60 people in a room that would normally hold 1,000, all spaced out with masks and fans and the doors open. But we still had a live event because people said they wanted to come. So sure enough, they did. It was a pretty cool event just because it was something different. Anyway, yeah, now I'm blessed to help people, whether it is get on stage like a TED Talk style, their core talk, share their message, which is so powerful, as well as build multi-day events, single-day events, and even teach in webinars. Because we've all been on some kind of teaching thing where people just ramble and it's boring. I want to help people be really effective. And we've been able to do that. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's a really great segue because there's so many questions I have for you, especially in this post-COVID day and age. And so the first question I have for you is, sounds like from the initial stages, because I know a lot of colleagues like White Coat Investor and a lot of the event space, especially in 2020, they got really burned like Southwest. A lot of companies, they put so much in, then just lost so much money. And so how do you, in this day and age, what is the role of live events? Because live events really take up a lot of time and consume a lot of resources, whereas there's other avenues that less capital intensive, but that can potentially be. So how do you address that?
Yeah, that is an absolutely phenomenal question. And I think it's at the heart of what people realized. Before COVID, it was like you had to have the live event. Post COVID, you do not need to. We wedged in the virtual stage before the live event. So here's the thing. You can get people on a virtual stage, whether it is a summit that you go to or an all-day event that's virtual or a webinar. The problem is they're going to be very distracted. Show up rate's going to be really low. But if you warm people up, and then instead of most people have this vision of a 2,000 person event. That was my mistake with my first event, right? I had this huge vision. A small event, 30 to 50 people in a room, people that got on an airplane, flew, stayed in a hotel, those people are going to be worth their weight in gold to you because intention is so high. Also, if you're maybe a doctor, I know that's primarily your audience. If you're doing something that is team oriented or learning, you're teaching, those people that come there are going to be so connected to you because you're going to get that much more rapport. But before you do that, your direct question was, how do you mitigate it with less resources? You can hold a virtual event that a live event equivalent, let's say to hold a 500 person live event, you should be looking at somewhere between 4 and 600,000. If you hold a virtual event, even with ad cost, you're probably not going to be at more than 100 or 150,000. But the layout of the event is different. The way that the event runs is different. It's not a direct apples to apples when it comes to the content, but you can fill a virtual event, build this up, and then you have to know how to follow up, whether that's email, whether that's using SMS text messages, whether that's using TikTok and your social medias to do retargeting ads to the people that showed up. You have to warm those people up, and it's another layer in the funnel where they come to the live event.
Yeah, and it sounds like now they have their own place. Like live events are more powerful and more upfront cost, but the potential revenue from the back end and also from the front end is much higher. Whereas webinars and virtual events are less, but you can reach a broader audience, but may not be as impactful. And so it's this balance. One thing that, because what was really interesting was like during COVID, I experimented with webinars, and they were a huge success because everybody was just signing up and everybody was at home. But then a year later, when everything opened up, everybody was back to work. Like I got zero, like my webinar thing just failed. Why do you think so many webinars fail? And what advice would you give to ensure a webinar is successful?
That, again, you are asking great questions. So the first thing, webinars, when I started doing them back in 2013, 14, they weren't nearly as saturated of a market. Now, back then, no one had been to a webinar. They were like, oh, I'm going to learn XYZ. And they're excited, and then they show up and they're ready. Over time, everybody attends a bunch of webinars. You learn that there are more bad ones than good ones. And you learn that you can multitask. So you might sign up for the webinar, put it on the screen over here, do this thing over here, or the time might come for it. And you know what? I'm not going to attend that. It sounded good at the time, but intention has gone down. During COVID, to your point, everyone was stuck at home. Everyone was looking for connection, how to get out there, do stuff, meet, learn, grow. As soon as they went back to work, that all went out the window. The way that we have found to be successful with it. So I want to throw a couple numbers in first. Pre-COVID, we were seeing about a 30 to 40% show up rate to cold traffic. We were spending $8 to $12 to get a opt-in. Then 1 out of 3 roughly was showing up. Post-COVID, our costs went from 8 to 12 to more in the $15 to $20 range to get somebody to opt in. That tells us that, hey, people have done the webinar thing. They're not really buying into it anymore. Their time is pressured. They're back out in the world. Then we saw show up rates also decline, which showed us that people, they say they're interested, right? Oh yeah, that sounds good. But there's no commitment. There's no negative if they don't show up. They have not spent any money with you. They don't have anything on the line. So those are the numbers that you need to pay attention to. Close rates have actually remained pretty steady. If you get them there, the close rate stays the same, which a rock star webinar cold audience is going to convert, if you're really good, 2 to 3%. Now you ask, what do we do instead? Or how can we mitigate this? And the answer is workshops. So a webinar is one way. I'm going to stand up here. I'm going to tell you my story, and I'm going to teach something, and I'm going to make you an offer. There is almost no audience interaction. A workshop is the same content structured slightly differently, and it is interactive. It is two-way. You can do much more with a smaller audience because you can do hot seats, you can solve their problems, you can answer their questions, you can prove authority, and you have to be there. Now, the downside is you can't automate it. You can automate a webinar all day long. Again, your show up rates are down. You're going to have a lot of cost. With a workshop, we actually suggest charging for the workshop because it will help improve your show up rates, and their intent is higher coming in. So do a 5-minute webinar or VSL to help sell the workshop. Reach out to people, sell the workshop. If you have 15 people that paid $47 or $97 or $197 to be in the workshop, your close rate out of that is going to be much, much higher. And you're going to know each person there. So the way the content is different, to lay this out very quickly, a webinar is here's my story so that I have some authority. Here is a testimonial and see an outcome. Here is what you're going to know by the end. So you future pace them and they get dreamy and like into what you're doing. Then you teach, sell. That's a very basic webinar layout. With a workshop, it's a little bit of who I am, a little bit about who each one of you is and why you're here. Then this is what you're going to know by the end. I'm going to teach a little something and I'm going to hot seat you and directly solve your issues. I'm going to get you to believe in what we're doing together. And you can't fake that and you can't do that on a webinar. Then when you make the offer is actually a lot softer offer. Hey, you saw how we were able to help you. If you want to jump on a call, I can show you how we can work together for 3 months, 6 months, whatever to do this. And instead of selling a course, you can actually sell a higher ticket item. So my suggestion is replace the webinar with workshop.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I've experimented with group coaching and then also these workshops. So well, the one question I have for you is, it sounds like a lot of the success hinges on building an offer that sells. And so what are the key components of an offer that sells effectively from the stage, could be virtual or in a one-to-many setting?
You are speaking my love language. So the offer is actually when we build a live event, a workshop, or a webinar for a client, we will sit down and a lot of times the person has an idea of their offer. They think they know their offer. My offer is I coach people or I build ads for people or I do X. A good offer should have a minimum of 5 things that it does specifically. And those should be based on the pain points that your audience has. So if your audience, I can use live events. The first pain point is I don't know how to pick a venue. The second pain point is I don't know exactly what to talk about. The third pain point, which is huge, is I don't know how to fill it. Fourth pain point is I don't know how to make the offer from stage without being salesy. So those are my general pain points. I want to design 5 line items in the offer that directly go to those pain points. Then I want to take the next, like I build this in a spreadsheet. The next line over is what tool do I have that solves that problem? The next line over from that is my story around how I learned about that pain point and how to solve it to create the item. The next line over from that is at least 1, if not 3 or 4 testimonials of people who have used that specific item to get the outcome. If I build all of those things out, not only do I have an amazing event, because each one of those things turns into a teaching point or a 1-hour presentation or an email series or a Facebook post, all that becomes the marketing and everything out here, but I teach it, whether it's a 90-minute webinar or a 5-hour workshop or a 3-day event based on those things. So the way we craft the offer is first pain points, then digging into our stories behind them. Once we've built it, the piece that everybody wants to skip, everybody thinks their offer is going to be amazing. Actually get on a call with somebody and run through the offer with them and say, hey, does this sound like you? Does this sound like the pain that you experience? Would this tool be helpful? Oh, by the way, here's my story around it. Does that make sense? And we actually do this when we build an event. We did a 2,000 person event last year, and we did this exact process. And we found out that 2 of the 5 things were not issues for the people, but through doing research, we found out what to replace those with. We also got their exact language from our avatar of how they talk about it. That changes everything for your offer, but you have to actually do the work.
The other question I have for you is, we're talking about just building the infrastructure. And then what advice do you give for people with these events looking to deepen engagement with their audience? And then how do you automate this at scale? Because it sounds initially, I'll give you an example, like when Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were building Airbnb, it's like they actually had to fly to the cities and talk to hosts, and eventually they were able to come up with a system. So how do you automate and scale it once you have these components in place?
Sure. So there's a couple questions there. If I understood the question correctly, how do you automate and scale the live event? So you start with the offer, and I would recommend before you do anything, but this is the call that I get the most often is, hey, we're 3 weeks, we're 4 weeks, we're 2 weeks away from the event. I rented a space for 1,000 people and I've got 5 people who have bought or 50 people who have bought. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And that goes for events. You're putting a lot of resources into doing the event. Start 9 months before minimum. If you're doing a actual, honest to goodness, live event in the room, there are so many good things that happen when you start that far out. You're going to need time to market. You're going to need time to set the whole event up. You're going to need time to do all this stuff. You have to test your offer. There's no way to automate that. There just isn't. If you really want the results, you automate. Any big brand worth anything does this. This is what you just said with Airbnb. They would get on the plane and fly. Once you've done it and you have your offer together, the next time you do the event, the offer doesn't change. This is a concept that I learned all the way back from Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham. The offer doesn't change. My offer is helping people scale through live events. I do that through books, free resources, blogs, public speaking on the front end that are all free. That's the lowest part of the value ladder. The next part of the value ladder is low ticket. Then we go to higher ticket, then we go to live events, then we go to one-on-one, right? But that value ladder, it's the same offer delivered with less of me in it, right? As it goes down to get cheaper. So when you want to build a live event that scales, if I understood the question correctly, if you want to scale the live event, you're going to do a workshop first, get really good feedback around all the stuff. The next time you do it, you don't have to do a workshop. You could actually put 50 people in the room. That was our first live event. We were supposed to sell 50. I ended up putting 80 people in the room. And I went and I filled it by hand selling tickets around Las Vegas. So it was actually an event for dentists and orthodontists. I went around to every office. I got so many donuts from Krispy Kreme that Krispy Kreme would not, they had a buy one, get one free promo, and they cut me off from it because I would go buy 3 dozen donuts in the morning. I would divide them up into half dozens, and then I would go drop them at offices to get 3 minutes to talk to the office manager, and I hand sold 80 tickets to fill that room. That was scale number one. Scale number two, I had more information. I could market it better. That allowed me to grow. So many people are like, I want to go to the 2,000 person event first. I tried that and it failed miserably. Everybody that I know that tries that fails miserably as well, because you don't have the lessons, you don't have the foundation to stand on. Feel free to pick that answer apart. If there's something more specific I can answer for you, I'm happy to.
No, it's really interesting because what you're describing is, for example, when I first started out like doing my social media, I would actually go on the social media and I'd be like, hey, I'll follow you, you follow me. And it's just like this reciprocity thing. But then as you grow, it starts to gain traction. So in the initial stages, you have to like put in that work. And then my follow-up question is, because I was experimenting with Webinar Jam, and basically they have, you can record a great webinar and you just put it up there. And it's basically, there's one where it's live. It's like you schedule it and you be there. But there's another one that's like, they offer it 24/7. So it's like always playing. So someone's always there. That was just, how do you automate it? I'm not sure if you can do that with your process.
Okay, you can automate a webinar all day long. And you definitely can. There are tools out there that you can use. There's one called A Event, like A, letter A, event, that will give you a virtual server and a virtual Zoom room, and it will make it appear live. And there's nothing, they work. If you can get people there, they will work. But your conversion rate is going to be much lower, which means you need to pour more money in the front end. That's the thing that when you're at scale, you have a marketing budget, you can pour money in. We have also, this is a shocking one to most people, but we have found putting the offer in more often. So not the full offer stack, not a 20-minute pitch, but a 3-minute version of the offer stack. Putting that in do about 30 minutes to get people warmed up, a 40, and then put an offer drop. And then teach, and then offer drop, teach, offer drop, teach, offer drop, and do a 3 or 4 hour tell them to go. The reason is that the more people see the offer, the more they'll stay on. And we've actually had people stay on all the way to the end, and they buy halfway through. but they stay on to see what's going on. You can also then, it gives you more chances to send people back to the webinar. If you're using Webinar Jam or Webinar Fuel, it'll say people watched 60 minutes or they dropped off at minute 55. It will actually send them a link that says, hey, pick up the webinar where you dropped off. And if you do a 3 or 4 hour one, it gives people more reason to come back. It gives you more content to get in front of them. Now with a live event, you can't fake a live event. This is something actually with all the stuff that's going on with AI by the end of next year in my opinion, will be able to fake video. You're going to be able to do deep fake of you talking, you're going to be able to write a script and it's going to say it for you. That's great for a webinar. I think it is because of that though, people are going to give less credit to videos. We're going to see YouTube, like the amount of content on YouTube is going to go through the roof. Like it's already a lot. Live events, being in the room with somebody is the only thing that you are not going to be able to fake moving like sometime in the near future. And that is going to make it much, much more valuable when it comes to sales. Getting people there though is going to automated webinars, doing some workshops. You're not going to automate a workshop. You could have somebody else teach it for you. You'd have somebody else under you do some of it, but the whole point is that it is live and it's high touch.
Yeah, and there's something that go where it's like you can't replicate just like that connection. Yeah, and I've actually been experimenting with AI webinars, and it's like I said, it can do 3 to 5 minutes, but like I said, it's clunky. But
It won't be for long. We're going to be, I think by the end of 2025, it's going to be very hard to tell the difference. And you know what? Some people will watch that, but it's also going to mean if you can write a script, let's break this out a little bit. If you can write the script and then the video will shoot it for you, how many more people are going to have webinars? Everybody will have a webinar because the number one thing stopping most people from doing it is they can't do this. They can't speak.
yeah,
Oh, I can have a fake me speak for me. Everyone's going to have all of it, which is going to devalue it.
yeah. How can people find out more about you and reach out to you and book with you, work with you, and check you out?
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, Steve.coffee, Coffee. That'll take you to a page. There are 3 things on there. The first one is a free course on webinars. It's how to build your core talk, the basic layout of a webinar. It's completely free. It's a course that we used to sell for $1,000. I just give it away now. The second thing that is on there is a link to work with me. If you want help with a webinar, help building a workshop, help building your core talk, or help with a live event, we do all of those things. You can book a call. Happy to talk to you about those. And the third thing is actually my legacy piece. So many entrepreneurs make a lot of money, but they do not keep a lot of money. They never get off the rat race treadmill of go earn money. And financial freedom is a very big part of my life. And it is what I feel most like if I could gift somebody, how do you build that? So we build a little financial freedom course, nothing heavy. There's no back end sale to it because there's nothing I have for sale, but it is something that will help you build financial freedom and infinite cash flow.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love this. And like I said, this webinar funnel newsletters are really of interest of mine. And thanks so much for coming on, sharing so much wisdom, and keep up the great work.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. Have an awesome day.